pew, 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 pew. Welcome to the last 2024 Go Getters Coaching Podcast. Man, we've been at it for a strong 5 episodes already, but we're going to clean out the year, kind of reflect on the good stuff. We'll talk about, in the upcoming episodes, the bad stuff, the lessons we learned, what we're planning to do. But for today, let's just talk about some wins. Peter, how you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. Man, I was thinking about how we gotta, how last time we were talking about what we gotta do for the intro. And then I know we were also talking about, hey, one of the things that we should work on is singing out loud, right? So I was thinking maybe we'll have to let the audience vote on it. But maybe at the beginning of every episode, we just do a quick song or a quick blip from a song that we like. Quick 10-second intro. Maybe, I don't know, depending on how people think how we sing and whatnot, maybe it'll be a hit, maybe not. But I think that'd be a great idea. What do you think?
Let's go, man. Listen, I was listening to some Nicki Minaj the other day, or yesterday. My patient's like, yo, we got to turn up the music. We're listening to chill vibes at moment. She's like, no. We're doing plyometrics. Like, I need some Nicki Minaj. So we put on some Nicki Minaj radio, and I was like, yo, there's some fire stuff. So
Anaconda?
Anaconda. Moment for Life is the theme song for us. And what you got today, though, outside of, obviously we're both taking some time off. What do you got going today?
Yeah. So I love these like end of the year times, man. I think it's a really great opportunity to really kind of sit back and reflect on, hey, like everything that we've been able to go through this year. I'm sure you feel the same way, but a lot of times throughout the year, right, we're just kind of constantly going through this like roller coaster ride of emotions of constant, ups and downs. Like, hey, one moment we feel like we're crushing it, we're on top of the world. The next moment we feel like, hey, we're gonna shut our doors and go out of business, right? But yeah, this end of the year, this time between Christmas and New Year's, it's always a really great time to, do some reflections on, hey, like, what are the stuff that went really well this year? What are some things that I'm really proud of? And what are some things that, we need to kind of double down on moving into the new year? And then, make some game plans for like plan of attack for this upcoming year. So got that going on, and then definitely want to hit on like a vision board, right? So I know that was something that we were chatting about as well too. It's something that I've never done personally in the past, setting up a mood board, if you will. But I'm really excited to sit down and get that going for the new year. And then, man, one more thing. I probably just talked about 2 different things that I got going on for this year. Man, this time of year just gets me so excited. That podcast that you share with me, let me pull it up so people can definitely listen to it. My First Million.
Yeah, My
Jesse
First Million.
Insler.
Yeah, Jesse. He started Zico Coconut Water. He did Marquis Jets, sold it to Warren Buffett. He started like All Day Running Club. He was the majority owner, I think, at one point, or of the Atlanta Hawks. The dude's a savage. He's done a lot of everything.
Yeah. But yeah, that episode, guys, if you want to listen to it, it's called How to Plan an Epic 2025 Without Setting Goals. Jesse Itzler. But what he recommends is, it's a product he has. It's, how to plan a, kick-ass, big-ass 2025 calendar. But it's a giant calendar, and you basically see all the months and all the days on one single piece of paper. So I've got that ordered. That's coming in soon. So I'm excited to sit down with my fiance Catherine. We're gonna game plan it out. So yeah, really excited.
Dude, that the vision board. So a couple of things. I used to think a lot of these things were corny. We kind of talk about some of the wins, but there's been a huge mindset shift mentally, and I think that's helped a ton as an entrepreneur. But the vision board is something that one of my coaches told me to do. He's like, you got to be looking at this shit twice a day, and I'm like, damn, how the hell do I look at a vision board twice a day, right? So I did this 2 days ago. I just kind of put where I want the businesses to go, what I want my perfect day to look like, what I want, my life to look like. And then there's kind of pictures and stuff like that of, moments in time in the past couple of years that I really enjoyed. Like, I'm going to try to create more moments like that. And then I've created a couple of like, oh, this is what I want my home office to look like. This is what I want the gym to look like. This is eventually what I want my home to look like. And there's something about just staring at these things, once or twice a date. I think it puts something out into the universe, and having it in your background as a computer screen, I feel like it's super easy because like once you open your computer for the work, it's like, oh, I know what I'm looking at. Once you sign off, it's always there. So that's kind of what I ended up doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think I saw like a stat the other day where literally if you just write out your goals, right, and just like put it on a piece of paper, the percentage of you hitting that goal jumps up like 40%, literally just by like writing it out, right? So the fact that hey, you're writing it out and then constantly reminding yourself like on a daily ongoing basis multiple times throughout the day only just like cements that idea and the goal into your head like hey, this is something that I can actually do. I used to think like all the time, like, growing up playing sports, coaches always tell you to go through like visualization, right? Like, hey, imagine yourself, making the foul shot. And I used to think like that shit doesn't like really like exist or really work that well. But, especially as I'm like getting further along into business, like this thing actually is legit, like visualizing it and then manifesting it and then making it occur is definitely something that's, I think is huge.
Yeah, I think at some point there's going to be a huge shift with like entrepreneurship and looking at entrepreneurs as athletes or looking at yourself as an athlete, right? It's like we just think of entrepreneurship as like, hey, we're just going to grind and push ourselves, and eventually, boom, you get injured or you get burnt out if you're an entrepreneur. So like our goal as entrepreneurs should be avoiding those burnouts. It should be looking at like, hey, how do I create these like sustainable habits? How do I make myself better? How do I develop skills, right? Maybe I'm working on my handles. That could be your marketing. Maybe you're working on your shot. That could be your sales. And maybe you're working on going lefty, righty. There's so many different facets of athletics, and I think so many different aspects of entrepreneurship that eventually, at some point, I think that's one shift I had this year is like, I'm a fucking athlete. Like entrepreneurship is like the hardest sport I've ever played, but I'm getting better at the sport.
Yeah, 100%, man. What would you categorize like a fadeaway 3-point shot in entrepreneurship?
Oh man, we call that hope marketing. Like that you get better at hope marketing. That has got to be like the hardest skill. That's probably the fadeaway 3-point shot. If you can keep that's like public speaking, bro. If you're nasty at public speaking, that's the fadeaway.
Unstoppable.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's unstoppable, dude.
certain skills.
Well,
Yeah,
awesome, dude. Well, yeah, let's chat about wins, man. Some highlights throughout the year. I've got a couple stuff written down, but yeah, why don't you kick it off with one solid win that you had for a moment this year, man?
I'll start off with the big one. It's getting our own space and signing that lease. So the story is super funny. We started off in the beginning of the year, and my buddy Dan, he's a chiropractor, and he's like, "Yo, I know somebody that's got this space open. Let me know if you want it." And I'm like, "Nah, we're good, man. Like, don't want to take up a lease because we're already paying at our gym, and I just can't imagine putting this every single month at the beginning of the month that coming out of the accounts." And I was like, we'll wait on this. And then like a month or two passes, and the gym that we're renting from, they ended up doing a lot of Olympic weightlifting. They started like they let someone else come in and start an Olympic weightlifting club. So that just became like you couldn't deliver a service, right? You do any floor-based stuff or you're doing an eval, and all of a sudden you hear the boom, like a sound, and you see your patients like blink, and I'm like, yeah, let's make the move. So ended up messaging Dan like, hey, connecting with the realtor. We looked at a ton of different spaces. Some spaces were like 5,500, and I was like, this is amazing, but the amount of money we're gonna have to put down for gym flooring is gonna be obscene.
Bro, gym flooring is like one of the crazy hidden costs that people don't think about.
Oh my gosh, dude! And if you try to do something different, because we went with like gray flooring, I was like sometimes I think to myself, was it worth it? But it looks dope. But yeah, that was a huge win for us, like to have our own space. And I think what that's allowed us to do is like create our own kind of environment. Like sometimes you're in a gym, and again, you could put some air fresheners and stuff in there, but it isn't the same. You have like decorations that you could put up that are super inspiring. You can curate your own playlist. Sometimes the speakers are kind of terrible, so like being able to have like a bunch of Sonos kind of in the space. We've just had people mention to us like it feels so welcoming and warm, and it's just super clean. And I think I don't ever want to hedge our bets on like a space selling for us, but I think it only helps, right? Like when someone comes into space and it's like, oh, this is completely different than any kind of physical therapy office I've been to.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like being able to control your own environment, from a patient experience standpoint is huge. And yeah, I know that feeling, man, where all of a sudden, you're in a sublease space, or just a much lower rent, all of a sudden going to a much, much higher rent. You're just like at the beginning, you're like freaking out. You're like, oh, how the hell am I going to ever do it? But, same thing occurred with us. Like when we made that jump, man, it was like a huge game changer. Same thing, revenue jumped up that much more. People, it's just, you become that much more of a legit business going from a sublease into your own standalone, man. So yeah, it's 100% something that is like super rewarding, and yeah, a really, really proud moment for sure, man. So that's huge.
Yeah, we had the best summer months we had, and that was when the space wasn't even done yet. And then we had the best November we've had since opening. So it's like it's cool to see kind of some of these things come to fruition. And there's something that hits different, bro. Like even when the space wasn't done, we'd be going in during construction. You're just sitting there on the floor, and I'm like, I don't know,
Taking it all in, man.
taking it all in, like all the fucking fumes and all the dust. I'm like, yeah, this is what it's about. But that was awesome. How about you? What was the win you got last year? This year?
Yeah, I would say one of the solid things that I've been able to do this year was actually creating and building out like onboarding training modules for our front desk and our physical therapists. So previously, before we did this, it was either myself or another PT. We'd actually have to like manually sit down with them and go through like manual ongoing training. Right, we had like systems kind of written out in place, but we'd still like take the time to actually like sit down with them and go through, hey, like this is how everything goes out. And so I probably spent like a solid month, man, just like every weekend slowly building out, hey, like doing Loom videos of like, hey, this is how everything goes in like PT everywhere. This is how our CRM is set up. This is where you drag the opportunities. This is how you do X, Y, Z. And then now like our onboarding process is like a lot smoother in the fact that, hey, they don't need to rely on like somebody to actually sit down with them. Like we'll still do in-person training with them, but a lot of it is asynchronous resources that they can either go through first on their own or be referred to if they ever have any questions on like, oh, how do I like do this again? How do I submit a super bill, XYZ? I have a whole training module that I can refer back on. And so, yeah, I would say like that's been like a really great win in terms of just getting feedback from the newer employees that we've been able to bring on as well too. They go through the training and they're like, oh wow, like this is actually one of the more robust onboardings and trainings that I've gone through. It makes it look really professional. So kudos to you. And yeah, hearing that is just always a really good feeling. Be able to help somebody feel prepared whenever they do come onto like a new job. So yeah, I think training onboarding is always something that I'm really looking to continue to kind of dial in to make sure employees are as productive as possible. That we talk about time to value of somebody coming in into a company, and so I think yeah, getting all those like training modules was definitely like a very big step in the right direction for us this year.
How many modules do you think you created?
I would say I think there's probably like 80 to 100 for the front desk, and then as well as for our PTs as well too.
So that's 160 to 200 total.
Yeah. Yep.
Damn.
Yeah, but if you think about it, right, it's like you create it once, and then I'm sure at some point, whenever we have like changes in our processes and systems, I'll go in, or I'll have somebody else like go in, right, and then update it. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff is you record it once, you set it, forget it, and then it's there as a resource forever for people.
Love it, love it. And where are you housing everything?
Yeah, so we currently house everything within our CRM. So under our CRM, there's actually like a membership site that we're able to create. So I basically, uploaded everything, all of our Google Docs, imported in there. So it's all centralized in one spot where they can just go in with their own login, password, and then go through it. And the cool thing is too, we can see like, hey, which modules they've been able to go through. So what we do is like we'll set meetings in place, like follow-up training meetings in place based on whatever modules that they have finished going through. So if I know, hey, they've gone through the CRM onboarding module, sweet. Now I can have like an additional sit-down training meeting with them, reviewing. Hey, okay, now why don't you teach me like what the CRM looks like? How do you move somebody through the funnel? And then yeah, that way it's a little bit faster of a productive meeting that way. So yeah, that's been huge. But yeah, it's a little bit more time intensive at the beginning. But what good thing doesn't take time, right?
No, for sure. And that's kind of like where it's funny because like every single year I do a recap of the previous year, and I started in 2024, like in January 6th of this year, I recapped 2023. And it's always funny because like I was like, oh man, highest highs and the lowest lows in 2023. And I was about to start my 2024 recap, and I was like about to say the same thing. I was just cracking up because I was like, this is how life is. And in 20, when I was writing it this year, I was like, the main goal for this year, it's like I think it's Who Not How that I read with Dan Sullivan, but it's
Mm.
kind of about delegation, right? Instead of trying to figure out how to do something, just find out a who that can do it for you. And then that's how you eventually start to delegate better. It's like identifying who you need on your team, not how to do all these miscellaneous things. So I offloaded finally the most, I would say, important thing, which was social media. So that's like second win. It's like just being off social media. So I don't have it on my phone anymore. Grayscaled my phone and got someone that's a global talent that's kind of handling all of the distribution side of things, right? Because I kind of think of social media as like two real legs. Like one of them is the creating, and then one of them is the distribution. Creating is the stuff that I love to do. Like I don't mind being in front of a camera, talking, breaking down movements, talking about stuff. But the distribution, being on your phone, uploading it onto something, creating a caption, then doing that for 7 or 8 different platforms. So my goal, kind of with 2025 and kind of what we've done in 2024 is like slowly do that more. We've offloaded social media, we've offloaded SEO, which is awesome because I was like manually doing these things, and it was fun to see our search engine, like our organic reach improve every single month. But eventually that gets kind of boring because you don't wake
Mhm.
up going like can't wait to SEO the shit out of this blog or this website. So it's been cool to be able to offload those things. We got someone that's doing Google Ads, and someone that does all of our PR, and like that's been awesome as well. Like just having things happen in the background.
I love that, bro. How much time have you gained back from that?
Right now, dude, it's like between that and like limiting my drinking. And I'm not gonna say like I'm like alcoholic or anything, right? It's like every single day I usually have like a glass of wine, or I'll drink a beer with my dinner. I've just like realized I'm like social media is one of the things you absolutely need for your business, but being on social media is terrible for your business. So the other day it was kind of funny because like Christine and I sat down, and I couldn't look on social media. We weren't gonna have a glass of wine, and we just kind of sat on the couch, and I was like, I think I'm gonna read. Like, I think I'm just gonna read like a quick 15 pages from a book that I've been meaning to finish. And I'm just realizing like how much time I was losing from social media, bro. Like, if I go into like distribution, it should only take me about 30 to 45 minutes to like
Mhm.
actually do all the different channels. I was spending probably 4 hours. So it's like that is way
Damn.
too much. Uh, you know, 3 to 4 hours on social media. So what I'm stoked about is like, getting that back, time blocking, getting into some deep work. But what you're gonna soon realize is like when you offload these things to the right person, the right who,
Mhm.
the person is like, hey, I'm gonna look at all of your social media content that you've posted, and I'm gonna let you know like any trends that I'm seeing for like what's done the best, and like I'll let you know or give you a better idea of like what kind of content to create. So it's been cool, but yeah, I'm gonna be getting back at least at the bare minimum 14 hours a week.
Dude, that's huge.
Yeah,
That's
just
huge,
having
man. Yeah, I love that. I think you went about it like the right way, honestly. And here's what I mean by this: like, you actually went through the task yourself first, so you had a basic understanding of what all these tasks involved, right? So it's like even though hey, you're not an SEO expert, you actually dove in a little bit, understood hey, what are the basics, and then brought somebody on to offload it. Same thing with social media, right? Like hey, you did like the brunt work of it for 4 or 5 years, right? I know you've been posting since like 2016, like every single day one single post goes out, right? That's consistency. Like what it's like to put content out there first before deciding to kind of offload this. Whereas I think a lot of times people like, and this is where they maybe kind of get into like a little bit of mistake, is like they offload something without understanding like what are some of the nuances that goes into it. That way it's like whenever you either outsource it or you do bring somebody on, you don't necessarily know like what are the standards that you need to hold them accountable to. And so it's like you don't need to be an expert in XYZ, but you should have a basic understanding and foundation of it, like go through some of it first and then look to delegate and offload it. But yeah, I think that's huge, man. Being able to have the confidence and letting control of something that you're really good at, right? Which is kind of this organic social media. I think a lot of times, as founders and entrepreneurs, like I know I deal with this a lot, where I feel like, hey, I'm the best at doing XYZ. And so I need to be the one doing it, right? And all of a sudden, XYZ is this list of like 100 billion different things, and then before you know it, you're the one doing everything. And so I know for me, like it's definitely taking me like a very, very long time to kind of like slowly understand this concept, and then actually taking action on it. I know like the who not how, this is something that I heard like a couple years ago, and I was like, all right, I gotta delegate. But yeah, same thing for me. Like I would say one of the big wins I had this year was actually delegating like clinical leaders within our clinics, right? So before, like I just had just PTs, and I would like manage everybody, right? So now actually this year was huge for me, where I actually brought on clinic directors from the PTs, and now they're the ones like onboarding the PTs. They're the ones doing the weekly meetings. They're the one holding other people accountable. And so I think that's been huge for me in terms of just like being able to let go of control and delegating that to somebody else, and then have them execute on it instead of like me.
Yeah, man, that I think is, man, it's so hard to talk about wins and not think about the the other stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, because that's a personal goal for us in the upcoming year. But I would say what you're saying is true, right? Because like, there's nothing that's like, there's definitely stuff that's tough, right? Those are like the skills that you kind of have to learn. You have to put yourself out there. But entrepreneurship is like, I think the people that fail, they fail because it's like death by a thousand paper cuts. All these little things keep adding up, adding up, adding up. And I remember thinking to myself this year, I was like, how do I not have time? Like, how do I not have time at this stage of the game? And that's kind of the stuff you realize is like, okay, you have some meetings here, and it's like, everyone should really only have about, 3 to 5 direct reports, like 3 to 5 people that you're talking to. So if you're managing like 10 plus people, and that doesn't even count like meetings that you're having with like, other people that are potentially helping you grow your business, like you just look at your calendar like, oh shit, I got no space for anything. How's that process? Was it smooth right from the get go, like onboarding the clinic director? Like, how did it go?
Well, in your head, right? You feel like, hey, this is going to be so smooth. I prepared for this. Like I've got all the SCPs written out, and then you actually get into the actual implementation process, and it goes a complete different direction. Right? But I think that's the same thing with like anything that goes about, right? There's always going to be like kind of different bumps along the way. So I think if anything, the good thing is like actually carrying out this process this year, and then being able to understand, hey, what are some of the things that we need to dial in a little bit more along the way. So now I know, hey, by the next time we do get an additional clinic director, these are some of the processes that we need to kind of iron out along the way. So I'll give you an example. Right? Like for me, I initially thought, hey, like this was going to be like a 90-day like onboarding period. But then I realized like, hey, this is everything that roles and responsibilities that we need them to do. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, like this actually needs to be more of like a 1 year long, a 12-month long onboarding process in order to kind of get them up to speed to, everything we want them to be at. Right. So I think it's just, yeah, you go into, like an idea with a certain, goal in mind, time frame duration wise. And I think you have to be okay of, modifying and changing timelines appropriately. You know?
Yeah, man, that is, because what I've come to realize, it's like, there are certain people, like there's certain strengths that everyone has, right? So it's like, you're either like a really good like visionary or you're really good like operator. And like what you're going to start to see, I think, in the upcoming like and when the next decade, it's already kind of happening. It's like people that are really good operators building these really good brands alongside like people that have developed really good personal brands. So what we've seen in like, if you guys are familiar with like James Clear, it's like Atomic Habits. He's written the book on habits, right? And he's partnering with someone named Andrew Wilkinson. Andrew Wilkinson is creating the Habit app. So James Clear doesn't have to do anything. He just has to market the app. Andrew Wilkinson is doing all the things in the back end in order to make sure that the app is successful. You know, the code and everything looks great. And this is probably going to be a huge business because James Clear's already got like the brand. So like having multiple people kind of join the team that like fulfill a very specific thing so that you can focus on all the other stuff. Like you're probably so good on all the ad stuff, figuring out how to get people through the door. But now you just need someone to operate all the, manage all the PTs because like that's not the thing that gets you up in the morning anymore, right? Like maybe it was super fun initially, but like if you focus on big picture stuff and have people on the operating side, I think that's awesome. So is that kind of your vision with stuff?
Oh, 100%, man. So one of the things that that I try and do on a like quarterly basis is really just doing a time audit. So there's an app out there that I use. It's called Timular, and I basically will just like go through a week. Usually it's about a 2 or 3 week time period, and I'll basically just like whenever I start an activity, I'll just clock and document what it is, and then track it for 2 to 3 weeks. And then based on those 2 to 3 weeks, like whatever activity takes up the most amount of time, that is like the next big thing in the next quarter that I know, hey, like I need to try and look to like offload this as soon as possible. But yeah, like with what you're saying, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and one of the I think like big things that somebody has to understand is like understanding you actually have weaknesses, right? And so like for
Yeah.
me, I understand, hey, like I'm not the best at XYZ, and that's totally fine. And so what we need to do is be able to find somebody who is really good at that, and then pull them in and then help us kind of scale from there.
No, I love that. So, man, we talked a couple of things from the business side of things. I think one huge win, another huge win from the personal side. Christy and I did an offsite, our marriage, and I think as you're an entrepreneur, you'll see a lot of things kind of fall through the cracks. Sometimes it's like social relationships, like your friends. I remember in 2023, like when I was reflecting on that year, I'm like, I barely saw friends. Like I almost I remember Alan was like the guy that my best friend that does all my videos. Like the only time I see you is when we're working together. And I was like, that sucks. 2024, I was just like, man, we need to start prioritizing the relationship more. Christy and I would always go on like dates and stuff like that, but we never like sat down and said like, hey, this is how you're showing up for me. This is how I'm showing up for you. How can I improve? How can you improve? What are some things that, we want to do better in the upcoming quarter? How can we hold each other accountable? Hey, when you communicate this way, I'm not a huge fan of it. Is there a way that we can change that up? And having that offsite completely changed the trajectory of like our marriage. And it's also like just there's like a clear delineation when those things happen. It's like we had that offsite, our relationship got significantly better. Like there was just like a clear understanding of everything. And most people, I would say, focus on their business more than everything outside of their business. Whereas like, kind of like the big ass calendar, you don't want to grow something and like have everything else kind of fall apart, which is why like success, you need to measure it more than just like how much the business is generating. It's like, okay, you're generating this much, but like how's life outside of it, right? Because like if life outside of it is trash, then it's going to be a super super lonely journey. So I think that was a huge win for us. And yeah, we didn't do anything crazy. We just went upstate, went to some fire restaurants, drank some dope wine, stayed on a houseboat. Right? So that was a cool experience. But that was like an absolute highlight for 2024.
Where did you get the I love that, man. Where did you get the idea of like doing an offsite with your significant other? I know a lot of times, like in business, right? Like we'll do like an offsite for the team for like a team building retreat. But like, yeah, how did you get this idea for like doing an offsite? Was it something like somebody else told you about, or is this something like you just, hey, like this is something that we should do and kind of like plan it?
Yeah, originally going into it, like we didn't plan this as like an offsite. We just
Yeah.
were like, hey, we haven't taken like a trip upstate in a while. So we kind of do like a couple of yearly trips. Like one of them is like we would go to Miami for an extended weekend. Another one is like we go to Hudson Valley. So when we went up to Hudson Valley, I think we knew that like how we were operating was not sustainable, right? Like love language and all these other things. And I remember driving up there, we just got into like a deep talk. And then
Mm,
that talk kind of proceeded for the whole weekend. Not like anything bad. It was just like being so transparent and honest with one another. And then I think it was like after the first day, I was like, yo, this legit feels like an offsite. This is like an offsite, and it's cool to shine some light on like things that we've been doing that are good, and then things that like could improve on. And then I started listening to other people that operate at a pretty high level. And one person that I heard, well, two, it's Jesse Itzler and Dan Martell. They're
mm.
both like, yep, a quarterly adventure with my wife, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. And I think it's just like stepping away from your day to day life and just enjoying time together without focusing on all this stuff. And it's completely different when you're in business with your significant other. And I think that's kind of where some of the struggles can arise at times.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge, man. What do you guys have? Man, I know we probably have a whole nother episode planned for this for 2025 goals, but real quick, give us a sneak peek of what's y'all's offsite for this upcoming year.
Shit, upcoming year, we're definitely going to be going somewhere tropical. So like we got to head back to Miami because we didn't do that this year. Um, we're kind of coming up with these kind of arbitrary traditions soon that I
Yeah,
think as I don't know who's listening to this, right? Some people are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. But I've come to realize is like as you get older, like one of the things you want is just to have arbitrary traditions. Um, so like next year, this year New Year's, we're like, it was kind of too late to plan. We had a lot of travel, but I'm like, next year we should just go on a cruise. You know what I mean? Like, we should just go on a cruise, and that's just our New Year's tradition. I would say the only thing we have planned for sure is probably going to be a trip to Miami, and then we'll start to figure out. We're always going to go to Hudson Valley because it's so close and
mhm.
it's a nice weekend. Um, Probably we were actually in a car the other day. She's like, we should go to Paris for an extended weekend. The flights are so cheap. I'm like, love Paris. So we'll probably
The
take
city of
flights.
love.
Yeah, we've been like four times. So it's like anytime, anytime we really love a place, we tend to go back often. Like Miami, we met there. So like, we're going to go back.
Yeah.
Hudson Valley, it's so close. We're going to go back. Anytime our foot touches the ground in Europe, at some point we'll end up in Paris. But
Mm.
are you guys planning anything like that?
So I'm getting married next year. So yeah, we're gonna elope in Mozambique, and then we'll do a honeymoon safari. But yeah, I think like one of the things that I actually, yeah, took a lot of inspiration from y'all's relationship is really kind of that offset, right? That's definitely something that like I don't do in my relationship, is really kind of intentionally like planning these kind of like getaways where it's like, hey, the goal is to like deepen the relationship a little bit more, right? So yeah, I think going to the new year, that's definitely something that I want to implement in on the big ass calendar. So yeah, we got that's a main trip so far that we got planned, but hopefully, yeah, hope to get another couple offsites in on there. I think one of the I don't know if you've ever heard this quote or not. I've seen it a couple times flown out there where people are like, "Hey, it's impossible to be like rich and have like your fitness really really well, and then also to have like a really good relationship. Like you can only pick like one or two of those three, right? It's impossible to have all three. I was thinking, I was like, man, like I think all those definitions are so kind of like arbitrary, right? It's like, what is the definition of rich? Like what is the definition of like healthy or fitness, right? Or I think the goal, someone saying like you can't be jacked, right, or something like that. um and I think like in reality, like you can kind of make up whatever your definition is, and then I think it's very possible to be able to achieve all three of those, right? You can have your finances on check, you can have a good relationship with your significant other, your family, your friends, and be successful in business and have your health and fitness on lock. I think the rate of which you achieve all these things is probably going to be a little bit slower than if you were to go all in on one. Right. But I think if you go like at just like a slower incremental pace, like I think it's 100% achievable to do all these things. It's kind of similar to like, I know like back in the day, people were talking about, it's like, hey, you can't like deadlift 500 pounds and like run like a sub 5 mile, right? It's like you can't be super jacked and you can't be fast. But now you just have like a lot more of these kind of like hybrid athletes, right? It's like they're taking a little bit slower to achieve these like end extreme ranges, but it's very doable. You just go at it at a slower pace.
I love that, man, and I completely agree. There's a great snippet from the book Almanac of Naval Ravikant, and I shared this with. It's funny because like I'm all about deep conversations, right? Like anyone I meet, I right at the gates, we talk to each other. I'm like, so like, what do you want to be? Like, what did you want to end up being when you're a kid and shit like that. But we were sitting in a car driving from Michigan to Ohio, and it was a guy's car. So all the guys in the men in the family drove together. And I was like, yeah, this is funny because like we're all in like separate stages of our life. And I dropped this one. I was like, when you're young, you have time, you have health, but you have no money. When
Hmm.
you're middle aged, you have money and you have health, but you have no time. When you're old, you have money and you have time, but you have no health. So the trifecta is trying to get all three at once. By the time people they realize they have enough money, they've lost their time and their health. And like I think about that quote all the time. And to your point about like being able to balance like the social side, the relationship, the business, yourself, etc. It's like the other win I had this year was like starting therapy, right? And like working with like a high performance coach and realizing that like everyone that's in your life isn't necessarily there, not necessarily there to stay. It maybe they're there for you from a moment in time, but like sometimes you cling onto these relationships, and it's like this push and pull, right? But at some point, you're doing all the pushing, and they're just being pulled along, and it's draining. So I think in order to have what you're saying, right, where like everything is in balance, you have to clearly kind of identify like who's a good fit to be in your world. Because I think at some point it's like you'll realize it's like, man, this is someone that was a good fit for who I was when I was, 14. Like when we didn't have a care in the world and we're like, drinking Smirnoff Ice in the park. But like, I've
The good old
grown.
days.
Yeah, I've grown and I got to do some other shit. Yeah, for you, you know, what have you, from a mindset perspective, any huge wins for you?
Mindset perspective, I would say, yeah, being able to, and I guess, yeah, this kind of ties a little bit along with one of the other mindset win, I guess, yeah, also tied into kind of just like overall business win. But being able to like replicate what we have here up in Jacksonville into another city as well too. I think like at the very beginning, for those of you guys who don't know, we ended up opening up a second brick and mortar location in Tampa this year, St. Pete Clearwater. And man, I like went back and forth on it for like probably like solid 4 to 6 months, man. Just like thinking, I'm like, man, like, is this possible? Just because I knew for me, like when we opened up in Jacksonville, I did so much like grassroots relationship like build up in Jacksonville, right? And so like that's a huge part of like where we are today with our Jax location. It's really those grassroots relationships, and that stuff takes time. And so for me, like being able to think like, man, like how am I going to go ahead and replicate this and duplicate this in an additional city, right? But then, you know, I think it just comes down to a mindset shift. It's like, okay, well, if all these other people have been able to do it, like, why not? Why can't we, right? And especially, I think one of the big things that, one of the confidence boosters that I had was being able to dial in paid advertisement. Right? I knew, hey, like one of the things, if we didn't have as much grassroots relationship, another thing that we could do to kind of help supplement client acquisition at the time was paid advertisement. And so I don't know, man. Mindset, I think it's really just you got to believe in yourself just enough to take action and pull the trigger. And I think like once we did, like pull the trigger on it and ended up going through and opening up down there. Like, it's never, you go in thinking, hey, everything's going to go smooth at one point. Um, but like we talked about earlier this podcast, right? Nothing ever actually goes according to plan. But I think that's okay. Right? It's like, and I don't know, maybe that's a mindset shift, right? Like being okay that, not everything is going to go according to plan. And that's just, it's part of the learning process, right? It's just, this is something that we'll probably talk a little bit more in depth next podcast episode of, like, all the failures and learning opportunities that we did learn this year, right? But I think, yeah, that's completely part of the journey, and that's something that I'm okay with now that maybe before previously I wasn't okay with at all.
Yeah, I remember one time I was calling you. You were kind of in the process of driving back and forth. And you're like, "Yeah, this shit's kind of hard, bro." Didn't think I was
Oh
ready.
yeah, it's 3.5 hours both each way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think that's one of the huge mindset shifts that I had. It's like we had a couple of things change up on us in the past month, and I remember I was kind of anxious during the holidays. And from a business perspective, I feel like every single time you upgrade your mindset, your business levels up. Then it's like it's just this constant ebb and flow of like you need to keep developing yourself so that you can see further. Because if you can't see further, then you have no idea where you're going. But I've come to realize, like with all this like high performance coaching stuff that I've been doing on the side, it's like at some point you just you just can be more present, even though shit's going on in the background, because you know that you'll always figure it out, right? And I
Yeah,
was like stressing out a little bit during the holidays. And I remember I was in bed and I was just kind of thinking to myself, I was like, why the fuck am I stressing out? You always figure this shit out. Like you
yeah,
always do. So that's it. You're just someone that figures it out, right? And I think once you kind of put that energy, you start to realize those things. And granted, this happens when you've eaten enough shit. Right? It's like, but I kind of just told myself, I'm like, once we figure this out, I won't ever question. I'm going to use this as like evidence for myself,
yeah.
in the future, that like I shouldn't stress over these things. Like these things are going to work out.
For sure. No, I love the fact that, hey, like, you always you have to continually to go about investing in yourself, right? Because if you think about it, like, you are the business's greatest asset. And so if you don't continue to, exactly with what you said, right? If you don't continue to level up, then like the business to a certain extent won't level up anymore. Right? It's directly correlated with you. So you got to protect the biggest asset. Make sure you continue to nurture the biggest asset, which is, yeah, you yourself. Yeah,
Yeah, man. It's and that's like, the first two wins, kind of talking about the things that we've been able to do from a business perspective. Everything else has just been like kind of mindset wins. And then the last thing for me, it's just like having just way more clarity with what the journey is going to look like. Because I think when you get to like a certain revenue number, you're kind of like, I don't know what to do next, or like, I don't even know what like organization chart looks like. I don't even know what the next role is going to be for the PT that joins our team. I think like sitting down again, this is part of the vision board, but like, okay, this is like what we're working towards, right? I want, locations in these specific places, but within each location, like what are the PTs that are going to be there? What are roles that they can grow into? What are things that we're going to actually need to, hire out for? Because like there are certain roles when you start to write things out that you absolutely need as a business. Like there's no freaking way that I'm going to learn some of these things. Like I'm legitimately going to need someone. But I think in the beginning of everything that we're doing, right, especially as a smaller business, like you'll need people that are more generalists. Like you're gonna have some very specific roles that you need eventually. But in the beginning, it's like you kind of need some generalists that can wear multiple hats. But the people that are with you early, if they're generalists and they can wear multiple hats, they're probably pretty special in regards to like the output that they can have, the personality type, like so those are people that will probably be with you for the long haul. So a huge win for us has just been like getting a little bit more clear on like the therapist journey opposed to like the client journey is dialed in, right? Like
Mm,
customer journey is dialed in. But what does the therapist journey look like after being a staff PT? Like it can't be, no one's going to be a staff PT for 20, 30 years. Maybe there are going to be some people, but for the most part, the earlier people, they're probably going to want more.
for sure, man. Yeah, I love that. What's the journey or path for creating a career large enough that the therapist can thrive and operate in and feel fulfilled upon within your company and business, right? What do you have you like? Yeah, what are the next stepping stones for PT for y'all?
Yeah, I think that there's two things, and I've come to realize it's like PTs like two things, right? Really good PTs that join your team, they're usually focused on clinical, like they love the clinical stuff, but all the numbers, finances, business side of things don't interest them. And then there's the PTs that are like absolute go getters too. They love the clinical stuff, but man, they kind of thrive with sales. They love kind of like the business side of things, and maybe they join the team and they're a little bit more entrepreneurial in nature. So for us, it's like as a physical therapist, you don't really need to think about much in the first like 2 to 3 years. Just focus on being a really good clinician, right? Like dial that process in, manage your caseload because you'll start to learn some of those other skills as well. And then from there, transition into two separate roles. One of them being a senior therapist. So like a senior therapist, you'll be seeing slightly less caseload. And the reason that for that is because we'll be charging more for your services because you're a senior therapist. People that we kind of see in our clinic are more complex in nature, and they need sometimes someone that has been doing this for a little bit longer. Our mentorship process is really good, meaning like I'll trust a lot of people that come through our mentorship and I'll bring them onto our team. But even when people do the mentorship, they still need to like go to the nth degree. Like we just keep building on what they've learned. So the senior physical therapist will get better work-life balance because they'll be seeing less people, but will be charging more for their time. And then they'll also take a role where they're developing the new physical therapist from a clinical perspective and helping them with that. And then the other role is going to be a clinic director, which is helping more so on the back end side of things, right? Like making sure things are going well there, making sure uh, therapists are hitting their target numbers, making sure that they're doing some outreach within their community. So it's just having two different roles that therapists can potentially step into. And then from there, when we grow into a bigger company, it won't just be like a senior therapist and a clinical director, but you kind of get this like regional director role, regional, senior therapist role.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I think one of the things that we did this year was almost kind of map that out too, but for our front desk. So like we man, front desk is hard, man. We get a good bit of turnover at our front desk, and I'm sure it's a lot of our people listening to this is probably the same in a lot of industries as well too. And whenever we do have somebody leave, we always have like an exit interview and kind of be able to figure out, hey, like what was the main reason, right? And it's usually like one of the most common things is just like lack of like progression in terms of like the career. And so like a lot of times they come in as an entry position, right? But then it's just like there's no clear sight. So man, I was like, how can we actually kind of continue to kind of like do exactly what you said, like lead them, create these additional career journeys for them so that they can feel like, hey, I can continue to grow as we continue to grow. And so one of the things we've been kind of mapping out is really, hey, like so they'll come in as a front desk SDR. And after a year, they'll transition into like an office manager where they'll have a little bit more kind of HR responsibilities as well too. And then from there, okay, now can they go ahead and train other front desk SDRs? So now maybe they transition into like a regional, right? So now they're managing both Jax as well as Clearwater. And then in the future, like if we have any other locations as well too, right? Can they hire and onboard other front desk SDRs and train them and get them up to speed? And then I think like the last progression that we had was like I think like I forgot what the name of it was, like director of like revenue, like all lead gen revenue streams or something like that, right? So it's like we don't have that yet, right? But it's like okay, as long as we have some sort of like plan and progression to get them there, like that director role will probably be there whenever we're doing like 5 to 10 mil, right? But it's like okay, at least we have like something set in stone so that they can kind of visualize it, so they can see themselves growing with the company as like the company continues to grow, right? It's just like you have to set the vision that's large enough for them.
Yeah, having I got to meet a couple of people this past year that do really well for themselves. Their businesses are absolutely crushing it. Multiple millions. And what I've come to realize, it's like these people know how to sell a vision,
Yeah.
right? Because like when people join your team, it's like, yeah, sure, they're excited about being in a one-on-one setting. They're excited about being in a setting where you actually prioritize clinical stuff. It's not just like, hey, Are you seeing enough sessions? Okay, how come you didn't do manual therapy? How come you didn't put them on, use all these modalities? Or you get to practice in a setting that you're a little bit more independent. But at some point, that's gonna not be quite as novel, right? So how do you keep people on your team? It's the leadership side of things and selling this bigger vision of like, why this company exists as a whole. Because if there is no why behind everything, it's just like, well, why wouldn't I just go out myself? I've learned all these things. And I think at some point, when you are able to sell this vision and you create that environment, people don't want to leave because the vibes, the culture, you feel like you're making an impact. Sure, you're taking on, less risk. I mean, you're going to be taking on less risk and still having more upside. Right? 'Cause like if you can eventually create a role where like you can make more than like a PT that goes out on their own, it's like, well, why wouldn't I do that? Right? I get to do some dope shit along the way because those things just weren't available when we were practicing. Like if they were available now, I'm like, hell yeah, why wouldn't I? But we got to create it.
100%, man. One of the things that I do with my team is like I'm very upfront with like, hey, what's our revenue goal, right? Like what's our revenue goal, what's our visit goal, and I still remember like 2 to 3 years ago, I was like, hey, like in a couple of years, like we're gonna hit seven figures, right? And this is what it's gonna look like. This is how many PTs we're gonna have, and then this is what other additional services that we're gonna like. And I think at the time I like just finished out the year at 220K, and it's like I have one other PT with me at the time, and she's looking at me, she's like, "Man, who's this fool talking about hitting seven figures? Like we barely have enough people to fill our schedule, you know." But like yeah, I would say like this is like a huge win for us. It's just like an arbitrary number, right? But we crossed seven figures this year. We as a company we closed out at 1.2 this year. And I think that's huge, right? Just being able to say that number out loud a couple years earlier, and then all of a sudden, hey, like now we can check that box off. But yeah, I was thinking a little bit about this, like when I was tracking all the numbers and everything for this year, man. I think like I still don't think I get as much satisfaction from an emotion standpoint versus like when I first crossed my first 10K month, man. I still think like, man, like, well, and here's, I was thinking about this, and this is why I think like the level of excitement, like, just can't be topped from that, right? Because for me, I knew like, hey, when I crossed that first 10K month, I never would have had to go back and work an insurance job or a home health job again. Like, this was enough sustainability wise for me. And I had enough proof of concept that, hey, like, this is like I can make this work on my own. And so I remember like the level of excitement. And then I think like after that, man, after 10K, it's like, all right, the number continues to move, right? 50, 100, and then, a mil, right? But yeah, I still think, that first 10K month, man, like the level of excitement was unmatched. But yeah, man, I would say like huge win for us this year, being able to cross seven figures. And, I know at some point, right, like we'll probably do, seven figures in 1 month. That'll be like an eventual goal. And so this is still just like a continued stepping point, but yeah.
No, we haven't hit that mark yet. Um, well, we hit a 6-figure month, and I was like, oh, like that feels good. But I
Yeah.
completely agree. It's like I think the main things that first month where you're like, oh shit, I can do this. This is
Yeah.
like that was probably the best feeling ever. The 6-figure month did feel pretty freaking good. But I
Yeah.
think all of it now, it's like it would be hard for me to, I feel like, because these kind of things happen step by step by step. It's not like you just went from this to this and it's like this
Yeah.
huge jump. It's
It never
holy,
happens overnight. Yeah.
yeah. So it's hard to like. I get what you mean by that, but dude, you should freaking pat yourself on the back. It's kind of like when what happens in NBA, when they like score like Kobe scored like what 88 points or
81.
something. Yeah, you put it on a piece of paper, like computer paper, take a picture of
Hold it up. Yeah.
it. Yeah, that'd be awesome. But no, that's freaking huge, man. And I don't know what, to me, it's like, I think the thing that kind of gets me super excited is like realizing that like this year, the game is the fun. Like I like playing this game again. Like in the beginning of the year, we had a lot of stuff going on, and I was kind of burnt out, and I was like, I don't like playing this game. So the fun thing and the win for me, it's like, oh, I like playing this game again. Like this is fun. Like going back to like tying it back together, what we were saying, it's like this is a sport, and I like kind of playing this sport again.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is like you're always learning, right? You're always learning, you're always adapting. You know, the struggles that you have, at 10K months versus when you have at 50K months, they're gonna be a little bit different, right? But it's like you won't be able to, conquer. It's always just kind of, yeah. Think of it as like playing like a video game, right? It's like you're playing a game. You figured out how to unlock this 6-figure month. Okay, dope. Like, how can we beat the boss at this next level?
Yeah,
Right? And you continue to just like level it up, right? But yeah, it's one of the fun things, and I think like a lot of times entrepreneurship, it sucks, it's lonely, it's tough a lot of times, but it's also being able to recap on these wins, right? That keeps us going. And I think the main thing is just like you got to have fun with it, right? At the end of the day, if you're not having fun, then like what the hell were you even doing?
for sure. Oh, and dude, fuck, we didn't even mention this. We launched Go Getters coaching.
Let's go.
Like, I'm not sure about you, bro, but like when someone messages me, like, and they're like, "Oh, I just had a huge win like this." There's two things that I like. I like hearing the, "Oh, I just sold my first pack," and then the second one's like, "Yo, I just hit." Like when someone else hits 10K, that shit feels awesome.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, like being able to help other people, reach new heights within their business from a revenue range is awesome, man. And I've, yeah, no doubt that like the people that are in our coaching program now, man, like they're gonna be able to like scale way faster than we ever did, man.
Yeah, dude, and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes because you know the first 2 years, I feel like if we were dialed in a little bit more with stuff, like it would have been so much easier. But no,
Dude,
I
game
think
changer, man.
yeah, the 2024 one, can't believe we didn't put that down. Launching Go Getters
Yeah.
and then being consistent with the podcast. Like here we go.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, dude, honestly, like I think 2024 was a huge year, man. Full of dubs when you look back on it like this. So yeah, great year for sure.
Yeah, can't wait to just chill today, and then when we start to talk about some losses, I love talking about the losses because the lessons learned is like kind of like
Dude,
when you like
that's like a that could probably be a 4-hour podcast, man. I could just go on and on about everything I messed up on.
talking about losses, kind of like you got a group of friends that are skateboarders, like, yo, bro, check out this car. Yeah, you want to know how I got that one? Like that is like that's where it's at. But no, you got to put some good positive energy onto the world. But anything else, Peter?
No, man, just happy to go at it for another year, man. Happy to play the game another year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most important lesson so far. It's just been like making sure that whatever it is you're doing, it's sustainable. You actually enjoy it, and like you can do this shit for a long time because nothing's gonna happen overnight.
Yeah, be proud of yourself, guys. I think that was something that like at the very beginning, I was just always comparing myself to other people, and I was just like, man, like why am I not doing good enough? But yeah, definitely like over the last couple of years, I've definitely just learned to compare myself to my own journey of like, hey, like what are we currently at? Am I leveling up myself more from the previous year? If so, that's a win. I think a lot of times, yeah, like on social media, right? It's like you oftentimes compare yourself to other people, but it's like at the end of the day, it's your journey, and that's what it's all about.
Awesome, man. All right, guys. Happy New Year's. We'll see you next year, and just keep getting after it.
Let's go.
Peace.